So in this last video of 10.3, I'm going to show you a few more equations that can be written in quadratic form so that you can feel good about solving these. So again, I look at this middle term here and I think, okay, what is this? And that's going to be my u. So in this case, u equals x to the negative 1. So that means u squared is equal, or excuse me, I don't need to write that, but I need to write this as u squared minus 4u equals 3. Okay, I need to set this equal to 0 before I can solve, so I'm going to subtract 3 from both sides. So I have u squared minus 4u minus 3 equals 0. Okay, so here I go again with the quadratic formula. I was just thinking if I could factor this one, but I don't think there's a way I can do that. So sometimes you'll see, sometimes you'll look at it and you'll go, oh yeah, I can factor that. So if that's the case, go right ahead. So negative 4 plus or minus the square root of negative 4 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 3 all over 2 times 1. So this becomes 4 plus or minus the square root of, this becomes 16 and 12. 16 and 12 together make 28 all over 2. And we can simplify this to 4 plus or minus square root of 28, remember, is the square root of 4 times the square root of 7. So that becomes 2 square root of 7 all over 2. And then when you are simplifying with the square root, remember we're looking at all three of those terms on the outside. And if we could simplify, which in this case we can simplify out a value of 2. We can divide each of these by 2. So this really becomes 2 plus or minus the square root of 7 all over 1. So just 2 plus or minus the square root of 7. Okay. And so then what I need to do is I need to put this back into my equation. Okay. So these are my u values, right? So u equals 2 plus the square root of 7. And instead of writing u, because that is my u value, I'm going to write that as x to the negative 1. So then remember, what is x to the negative 1? Well, x to the negative 1 is really 1 over x, and that is equal to 2 plus the square root of 7. So when I think about how I solve this, okay, I think to myself, well, I need to multiply by x on both sides. Okay, so I really have now 1 is equal to x times 2 plus square root 7. I wrote the x part first, no big deal. And then I'm going to divide by 2 plus square root 7 to get that away from the x. So now I have 1 over 2 plus square root 7 equals my x. But remember, previously we've learned that we're not allowed to keep this this here in the denominator, this radical expression. So I have to rationalize that. So I'm going to multiply by 2 minus square root 7. 2 minus square root 7 in my numerator and my denominator in order to rationalize this. So now what I have is 2 minus square root 7 in my numerator. And then in my denominator, let's think this out. I have 4 plus 2 square root 7 minus 2 square root 7, which is great. And then I have a minus square root 7 times square root 7, which is square root 49 or 7. So I end up with 4 minus 7. This is my x. And so I end up with 2 minus square root 7 all over a negative 3. That is my x value for there. I need to do that all again for my second one. What is the difference between my first value and my second value? Think about this. This was 2 plus square root 7. So now x to the negative 1 is equal to 2 minus square root 7. I'm going to leave it up to you to work this out. Okay? But how will it be different? Thinking of when you get down to this stage here. Okay, this is going to now be 1 over 2 minus square root 7 equals my x. So what will you have to multiply by in order to get the denominator to be rationalized? The conjugate, right? So what does that turn it into? I'm going to propose that you're going to end up with x equals 2 plus the square root 7 all over negative 3. But I want you to work it out and see, does that really come up to be the right answer? Okay, let's take a look at the next one. So in this problem, my u value is going to be the square root of x. And remember, this is u squared, because if I square the square root of x, it's just x. So this becomes 2u minus, 2u squared minus 2u, minus plus, I'm slipping, plus 2u minus 12. I was looking at that minus 12, I guess, and equals 0. I want to try factoring this. I think it might factor. Let's see. Plus u minus 6 equals 0. So then I think to myself, are there two numbers that multiply to a negative 6 but add to positive 1? That's going to be u plus 3 and u minus 2. Now remember, the 2 out in front doesn't actually cause us any issues. It isn't part of our solving. So u plus 3 equals 0, so this is u equals negative 3. And u minus 2 equals 0 means u equals positive 2. Okay, so these are my two u values. I need to then put those back in to figure out what my x values are. So let's start with this. Negative 3 equals the square root of x. Well, how do I solve this? I square both sides. Right? So now I get 9 equals x. And then on this one, 2 equals the square root of x. To solve this, I square both sides. And I get 4 equals x. Now remember, I put in the other video, there is that caveat that if you square or raise to the 4th power or any even power both sides, you have to check your answer. It's always a good idea to check, I suppose. But for sure, these ones you need to check. So here, 2 times 9 plus 2 times the square root of 9 minus 12, does that equal 0? This is the question. Well, this becomes 18. And 2 times the square root of 9, so that square root of 9 is 3, so 2 times 3 is 6. Does 18 plus 6 minus 12 equal 0? Well, 18 and 6, that's 24 minus 12. Minus 12. That does not equal 0. So this answer here is extraneous. Now we got to check this other one here too with the 4. So does 2 times 4 plus 2 times the square root of 4 minus 12 equals 0? That's what we're checking. This becomes 8. 2 times the square root of 4, well, the square root of 4 is 2, so 2 times 2 is 4, minus 12. Well, this becomes 12 minus 12, which equals 0, so that checks off. So our only real solution then is x equals 4. Okay. Let's take a look at one more. In this problem, when you're thinking about u, again, we're looking here, so in this case, u is equal to x minus 8 over x. And most of the time they're going to set these problems up for you just like this. So u squared plus 5u minus 14 equals 0. Now it just so happens to be that I think I can factor this one as well just by looking at it, because I know that I can get 14 using 7 and 2. So I was thinking that this could be u plus 7 and u minus 2. And that does work out. Remember, if you can't factor it, though, you're going to have to use the quadratic formula, and that's okay. Or if you're unsure if it factors, you can always use the quadratic formula to check. So this is u equals negative 7, and u equals positive 2. Now, I need to plug these back in so I can figure out what my x value is. So this is going to give me x minus 8 over x. Okay? So how do I solve this? Well, first thing I want to do is get rid of these fractions, so I'm going to multiply both sides of my equation times x, which is my least common denominator here. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to multiply this side and this side times x. And when I do that, I get negative 7x is equal to, over here, this gives me x squared minus 8. Because the x denominator cancels here, but the x times x is x squared. Looks like I have a quadratic, so I need to set it equal to 0. So I get 0 equals x squared plus 7x minus 8. Conveniently, this factors into x plus 8 and x minus 1. So x plus 8 equals 0 means x equals negative 8. X minus 1 equals 0, so x equals positive 1. I'm not done yet because I just did my first value of u, which was negative 7. Now I need to do it again for positive 2. So I say 2 equals x minus 8 over x. But this process is going to follow pretty similarly to the one I just did. So now I get 2x equals x squared minus 8x. Go ahead and move it to the other side. 0 equals x squared minus 2x minus 8. Oops, this isn't 8x, it's just 8. And then I say, well, can I factor this? Sure, I can do this as x minus 4 and x plus 2. So x minus 4 equals 0. So x equals 4. And x plus 2 equals 0, so x equals negative 2. All of these are solutions for my original equation. Now when I look back here at that original equation, now you need to look and just double check. What would have made this a problem? If I had solved and I had gotten x equals something that would have been a problem, what would that have been? Meaning, what can x not be? You got to be very careful, because if you had gotten x equals 0, 8 divided by 0 is undefined. That would not have worked. But in fact, all of these others work out just fine. You can check them and to make sure that they actually do work. Okay? That's all for section 10.3. I know there are a lot of different kinds of these problems that can be written in quadratic form, but keep practicing them and you'll get better at them for sure. Easy as time goes on, they will get easier for you. Okay? Keep up the good work. We'll see you in the next video.